Today we're going to talk about the $1,000,000 question that Podscribe answers. If we go back to our flowchart over here, the question is that advertisers are giving agencies money, who are giving publishers money, who are giving podcasters money, who are then, in theory, sending their listeners to go to the advertiser's website. The big question is, how many of those listeners actually go and purchase or visit or install from the advertiser's website as a result of the money that the advertiser originally gave to the agencies and to the publishers? That is the $1,000,000 question, because from an advertiser's perspective, they not only want to get more customers, but they also want to see how effective podcasting is as a medium to send customers to their websites compared with other platforms and channels like Facebook ads or billboard ads out on the street or TV ads, stuff like that. So we're in a competitive landscape here, and advertisers need really solid data to figure out whether it's worthwhile investing further into podcasting. We'll just look at the definition for attribution in podcasting to start. Attribution is the attempt to determine if a podcast ad exposure led to a desired web action. That kind of seems a bit complicated and vague, but let me see if I can make this clear. If an advertiser like BetterHelp were to pay Joe Rogan $1,000 for a shout out, BetterHelp wants to find out how many of Joe Rogan's listeners then go on to buy something from BetterHelp. So we have the ad exposure. Let's do blue. Nice. We have the ad exposure, which takes place on Joe Rogan. And then we have the desired web action, which in this case is a purchase on BetterHelp's website. That's one possibility. Another possibility could be another podcast, another brand, and another action. Maybe the podcast is the New York Daily, which is from the New York Times. And maybe the action is actually an install. How many listeners who listen to the ad install the application that the advertiser, who happens to be Dream Games, because Dream Games is a app builder. How many people who listen to the ad install the application from the advertiser? Maybe the game is, I don't know, Clash of Clans. So the advertiser will pay the New York Daily to run an ad for Clash of Clans, and then they want to see, along with the New York Daily, how many people install Clash of Clans on their phones. The advertiser wants to see this because if they spend $1,000 and they make $2,000 from the placement, then they're going to keep spending on the New York Daily to get more installs, to make more money. The New York Daily wants to see this number because if it's doing well for the advertiser for Clash of Clans, then they are going to get more money from the advertiser. They're going to say, oh, it's doing well, please pay us more. And then the advertiser will say yes. And the same goes for the podcast. If the podcast sees that the ad is doing well and it resonates with his audience, then his audience will be happy because they're being connected to a product that they want and were looking for, and the podcast will get paid. So everyone benefits when we have reliable attribution. Attribution doesn't necessarily have to do with a website purchase. It can also be things like an install of an app, or a visit to a website, or a sign up, or a donation. It's a whole bunch of different possible things that we're tracking. I just use the word web action here to refer to all of them at once, but it doesn't have to be a purchase, though that's the most common. Okay, so that's what attribution is. The next question, and this is the $1,000,000 question, is how do we measure it? There are a couple of things that non-technical people would automatically think of doing when they want to measure attribution. One is to use a promo code. A promo code is a discount code that is tied to a specific podcast. The idea is that if that specific podcast uses the promo code, the advertiser can then count how many purchases came in with the promo code and then say, based on this, that those conversions can be attributed to the placement in the podcast. Okay, and let me switch this to purchase just so it makes more sense. For example, if you were listening to the New York Daily and you hear them say, use code BetterHelp2025 to get 20% off your purchase, the New York Daily may be the only place that gets this code that says that. Maybe Joe Rogan gets JRE2025, and then after the people go and purchase, the advertiser can look, oh, there were 15 from BetterHelp Daily, or BetterHelp 2025 from the New York Daily. There were 20 from JRE, and since JRE led to 20, we should double down on JRE and reduce our investment in the New York Daily. What are some problems with promo codes? Okay, there are two big ones. Three, but mostly two. So yeah, two big ones. The first one is that people don't use them. If you're driving your car to your daughter's school because you have to drop her off and you're listening to a podcast and you hear Joe Rogan say, use JRE 2025 to get 20% off. Even if you want to buy it, when you get home, you're just not going to remember it. And you're just going to go buy it, or you're just not going to buy it because you don't have the time to go back and find where in the podcast episode the promo code was used. And that's not good because it means that there are more people who are buying than the promo code uses reveal. So there's a lot of missing attribution that takes place, which makes it seem like podcasting is less effective as a platform than others, which means that advertisers are going to be less likely to spend more money in podcasting, which is not good for you and me if we are watching this video because we probably work in podcasting. Okay, so that's one issue. People forget, they don't use, and they don't get attributed as a result. The second thing is leakage. There are these platforms like Honey where they go through the internet and they scrape the internet for uses of a promo code. Then they show that promo code to other people so that other people can use that promo code when purchasing. The issue with this is that those other people will use the promo code without having come from the podcast, which makes the podcast seem a lot more successful than it actually was. It is, in other words, too good to be true. And then the advertiser looks at that and thinks, this is unreliable data. We cannot trust it. There likely weren't this many number of people converting, and therefore I'm probably better off spending my money elsewhere where I can actually track the performance of this buy, of the spend. So that's the second thing. Promo codes leak, and then people who don't listen to the podcast ad end up using it and purchasing and getting a discount despite the fact that they didn't come from podcasting. So those are the two issues with promo codes. Then there are vanity URLs. Oh, one third issue, the small one, is that if you use a promo code, there has to be a purchase, right? You can't track website visits or signups or something like that. It has to be a purchase. So this brings us to the next thing that people usually use to track attribution from podcast ads, which is vanity URLs. These are special URLs that only the listeners of a podcast will use. So it might be go to betterhelp.com Joe Rogan. And then what may happen is anyone who goes there gets 20% off automatically. If the website or if the brand is not looking at purchases, you just need to count how much to this website, this particular page on your website, to get a rough sense of how many people are coming from a particular podcast. Let me change this to the Joe Rogan podcast because that makes it more sensical. There. So that's a vanity URL. It's a particular URL that is used to count visitors to a website. What are some problems with this? A couple of them. One, you can forget it. Same as promo codes. Two, those can be leaked if there's a discount applied. Three, what about all the people who just type into Google BetterHelp and don't go to the particular vanity URL, even though they listened to the ad in Joe Rogan? You're missing out on the conversions from those people. Just like you're missing out from the conversions from the people who may have listened to the ad, but just couldn't figure out what the promo code was and purchased anyways. So that's another issue with vanity URLs. You can see why attribution is $1 million question. Everyone wants to go and spend money in podcasting, but they cannot do so if they cannot see the returns that they get from their investment. That's vanity URLs, and those are some of the issues with vanity URLs. Then there is post-purchase survey data, and this is where people will listen to the ad on a episode, they'll go purchase, and then after the purchase, they will be prompted to fill out a survey about where they came from, the podcasts that they listened to, or the multiple podcasts, and then the brand will have information about which podcasts were leading to the most purchases. Problem with this as well is that not everyone does them. But in my experience, aside from using Podscribe, advertisers and agencies also rely heavily on post-purchase survey data. They rely on all four: IP-based matching, which is what Podscribe does, vanity URLs, promo codes, and post-purchase survey data. But post-purchase and IP-based matching, I think, is what advertisers and agencies rely on most heavily to look at results. So that is the third option here for trying to answer that $1 million question of how many people who listen to a podcast ad then go on to do something desired for a brand. And that is what attribution is. And the big question that everyone in the industry is trying to find an answer to.